People disagree. So it's not about going through life saying, how can I avoid all disagreements? If you're avoiding all disagreements, it means probably that you're not speaking up for something that's important to you or something that you believe or an idea that you have. So you want to be willing to speak up even when it means disagreeing. It gets a little tricky when the person that you disagree with is your boss. What if there's something that you say, this is something I do need to actually step up and speak up and disagree with my boss on? Because let's face it, you're not going to disagree with them on everything. You're going to pick which are the things that it's worth it to step up. So the question is, if you are going to step up, how are you going to do it? Before we look at the how you're going to do it, the encouragement here is this. Yeah, it could be a little tricky. It could be a little complicated, speaking up to your boss, depending on the relationship, depending on the personality, depending on the topic. On the other hand, if you do it in the right way, consider this. You're going to come across like a leader because leaders disagree. Leaders have new ideas or differing ideas that then becomes the new thing and moves the department forward and moves the whole company forward. So that's where you want to be. So it's not having no disagreements. It's, deciding when you're going to disagree and then knowing how to do it. Let's look at 3 ways. First, when you disagree with someone, it's so easy in our minds to think, they've got to be kidding. They must be crazy. That can't possibly be the idea they have, or they can't possibly think that. And it's easy sometimes to just blurt that out and to say that and to say, you've got to be kidding. If that person's your boss, that's probably not the right way to go. And if it's anyone, that's not the right way to go, because when we use language like that, the other person immediately goes on the defensive. So instead, you want to make absolutely sure before you proceed to take that deep breath, to keep it neutral, and to make sure that they know that they have been heard. Until people know that they've been heard, they're not going to be willing to hear you out. They're not going to be open to what you have to say. They're going to be in this kind of a stance. So you've got to hear what they say. You've got to listen to what are some of the main concerns they have? What are some of the main even words and language they're using? And then you've got to be sure that they know that you've been tracking with them. So you're not going to repeat every word exactly and sound like a parrot, but you're going to say, okay, so if I'm hearing you right, so what I'm picking up here is, okay, so it sounds like you're, and then encapsulate, paraphrase, summarize while using just a few of their keywords so that they know that, wow, they really, really were hearing me, listening to me, and truly hearing me. When you do that, that sense of disagreement, of that I'm going to come into a fight here from your boss, that goes away because they go, oh, I've got someone who really, really, really gets it. And now they're much more open and they're much more ready then to hear what you have to say. Second, if you're disagreeing with someone, the biggest mistake that people make is blowing it on the transition. You got to win the transition, especially if the person you're disagreeing with is your boss. And what I mean by that is most people if they do a good job, which very few people do, of summarizing or paraphrasing or showing that other person that they've heard what they've said, then they go on to say what they have to say, and they take that transition like something like this. They'll say, but if you think about it, however, I mean, the data shows, or I mean, really, you've got to consider, like they use language and they use a tone that will tell the other person, oh, so really, even though they just paraphrased or summarized what I had to say and I was kind of feeling good because I was feeling understood, they totally disagree with me. And now they're judging what I have to say. But however, become those judgment words. So you want to be thoughtful, careful in the transition. Just say something that shows them that you have a different perspective, an additional perspective. And that way, especially if it's your boss, they're going to feel respected, and then they're going to feel much more open and willing to hear what you have to say. Third, if you're disagreeing with someone, and especially if you are disagreeing with your boss, and now it's time for you to say what you want to say, the thing that is that you how you are disagreeing with them. Take a note from Aristotle and be sure that you're using both logic and you're using emotion in what you have to say. Andy Grove did such a former CEO of Intel did such a great job of doing this with Steve Jobs over email. Steve had said something over email that Andy Grove took real exception to, and he came back and did a masterful job. And he laid out he told him, here's where I come in on this. And he laid out the reasons. He gave the stats, he gave the data, but he didn't stop there at the very end. Because if you stop there, you're not tugging at something that's very important. People don't just make decisions. And in this case, Andy Grove was trying to get Steve Jobs to change his mind. He was disagreeing with him and seeing if he could get him to change his mind. And people don't make those kinds of decisions just on logic. There has to be some kind of an emotion. So he finished up that email and did such a beautiful job of saying, I really hope you do such and such, hope you come to believe such and such, because it would be a real loss to both of our companies. It'd be a loss to the world if you didn't. So think about that. What would that look like for you as you think about disagreeing, especially with your boss? Be sure to come armed with stats, and be sure to bring some appropriate emotion as well. If you're going to disagree with your boss, you don't want to lose your job over it. There's some things that we're not going to disagree about, with it. We're just going to keep our mouths shut and go on. There are things like that. But if it's time and you've looked at it and you've weighed it and you've said, this is important, I've got to do this, you're going to be sure that you make sure they know that they've been heard. Because if they don't think they've been heard, there's no way forward. You're going to be sure that you're powerful in the transition, and you don't just go in and after you do that beautiful job of summarizing what they've said and they go, yeah, that's exactly it, you're not going to blow it by saying, yeah, but, and help them to think that, cause them to think that, they're discounting everything that they just said, all that good summary, how I felt like they were understanding me. They're going to counteract everything with the wrong kind of language. And then you're going to come in with a balance of logic and emotion. We know that from Aristotle, as he talked about a powerful message. So you're going to make your case, and you're going to bring just an appropriate amount of emotion to seek to help them to consider things a different way. And especially if it's your boss, if you do that and you do this in this, again, masterful way, you're much more likely to look like a leader. Leaders, they know when to speak up. They don't always speak up, but they know when to speak up, and when they do it powerfully. And if you use these strategies, you will too.